Darklings. So I've been asked a few times to do a coverage video on werewolves, like I've sort of done with vampires before. I typically say that there's two kinds of people. There's werewolf people and there's vampire people, and I've made it kind of really obvious that I'm a vampire person. The fact that I have 4 times as many vampire movies in my collection than I do werewolf is also sort of testament to this fact. But I still did my research, so I might as well share what I found out. So pretty much the history of werewolves and lycanthropy and all of that has dated back into Grecian times with various epic story nods to lycanthropes within Greek history. It didn't, however, have its boom or interest in European folklore and society until roughly the 13th century. So from then it was tied in really strongly with witchcraft, particularly in Western Europe, and then tied more towards vampires in Eastern Europe. But some references to it have dated to the berserkers of Viking times and different metaphors for wolfskin and the animal inside of man, which is where lycanthropy comes from as a psychological disorder. But there's also different types of mythology surrounding it, such as the loup-garou, where you're born into it, or you're cursed into it by a witch, or bitten when you're cursed from there. Either you turn into a wolf only during the full moon and then come back to yourself without any memory, or you turn into a wolf and stay that way, and there's all these different types of mythology attached to it. There were various cannibals that have been tried as werewolves in various courts in medieval times, and a good way to get caught up is to also do what I did, which is reading. So here's a couple of books that I have. Here's the complete book of werewolves, which has some interesting coverage on the werewolf scare in Europe, in the Americas, and in film and folklore. And then this one, which is very encyclopedia set up, and it just has different entries pertaining to things having to do with lycanthropy. And then this one that I have featured in some other videos, because this has proved a very good research jumping off tool for me, which is the Encyclopedia of Vampires, Werewolves, and Other Monsters. So, because I did mention movies, I might as well talk about them. So these are just the ones that I own. The American Werewolf in London is a must-see for anybody, especially if you're a film lover, especially if you're a horror film lover. You can't really skip this. It's noted for receiving the first Academy Award for Best Special Effects Makeup, courtesy of Rick Baker, showcasing John Landis's Creature Kid, like Monster Kid love, with a lot of nods to classic werewolves and mythology, and having the main character of David haunted by his kills is an interesting touch. There's subtle notes of humor throughout, and it makes it a very classic film, and the werewolf transformation sequence is very grueling to watch. Next one up on here is actually a little bit embarrassing. So I read this book when I was about 13, and I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. The movie came out when I was 15, I had to see it, and it just sort of ended up getting bought instead of pre-watched. And it's entertaining. It is not a good movie. It's entertaining. This is going off of the loup-garou concept that being a wolf is a heritage kind of thing. There's sort of human pack dynamics, which is an interesting concept. It has good music, and it's filmed in Bucharest, Romania, so those are pretty much the two main things it has going for it. However, the wolf transformation sequences in it are lackluster at best. So this is a fun watch, but don't expect anything great from it. This one, however, is very beautiful and is definitely layered very heavily. Part of that is that it's Neil Jordan, who I'm a fan of. Part of it is that it's based off of Angela Carter's works, who I've mentioned a few times, as having like fairy tales that are rewritten with psychosexual undertones. This one's definitely playing off of that pretty successfully. It's pretty remarkable for having Stephen Rea in it, because it's a Neil Jordan film, having incredibly fucked up wolf transformation sequences, and having a scary grandmother played by Angela Lansbury, who is telling all these fucked up stories about men to this 12-year-old girl. And it's kind of using the werewolf as the metaphor for the sexual beast inside of man, and it's kind of fucked up, but it's definitely worth a watch. This one, I only find it worth a watch because I find it really entertaining. It's not a good movie. It's good if you like Kevin Williamson, and if you like Christina Ricci, and if you like Wes Craven. So there's notes of humor in here. It's supposed to be almost spoofing some concept of werewolves, but it didn't exactly completely succeed in doing that, so there's a lot of pitfalls in here, but it's entertaining. I like Christina Ricci. Jesse Eisenberg was fun in there, and it's the same screenwriter as Scream, which is just sort of a bonus. Even if it got a little bit butchered by studio interference, it's still worth a watch to me. And then, because it's me, and my favorite werewolf film is Ginger Snaps, I have to, of course, include this. This is using puberty in girls as an extended metaphor for werewolves, which is, you know, always an interesting bonus. You can do that. There's a lot of clever writing, clever acting. Even if the beast itself is not terribly impressive, it's certainly worth a watch, and I really adore this film. The sequels, however, which, yes, I do in fact own, not so much. This one's kind of interesting in that it starts to deal with werewolves and trying to take the cure as a alternate for drug addiction, and then it has some twists and turns in there that are like, that's fucked up. So this one's worth watching, I guess, but not really worth owning. It's kind of weird. This one is sort of repeating a lot of the main plot elements from the first film, but not as successfully. It's watchable, but it's not what I'd call good. This is just a Hammer film collection, which is actually addressing The Curse of the Werewolf, which is Hammer's take on remaking a Universal monster. So it's going off of the concept of a man is bitten and then gets turned, and he has no memory of killing all these people. And then, of course, I can't actually go without mentioning Joe Dante's The Howling. So this is also a little bit in the comedic vein for something so violent. Came out the same year as American Werewolf in Paris, with Rick Baker's protege, Rob Bottin, doing the special effects makeup. I like the makeup effects in this one. This movie is really fucked up, and I think it's really interesting. And this is kind of like a commune of like cult-like werewolves, which is interesting. I saw the second one, which was a horrific mistake. Your sister is a werewolf. That was a terrible mistake. The only things it had going for it were Christopher Lee and the main song of the film. Aside from that, it was terrible. There are a lot of sequels to this, and I can't even remember all of them. Apparently a handful of them are good, but the first 2 or 3 after the first one are not worth watching from my understanding, so I can't give you the full rundown. Definitely watch the first one though. It's totally worth it. Even if I didn't like it the first time I watched it. Okay, and I had to bring these over here because this is like my early teenage year concept of werewolves, which was the Underworld franchise, and they call them lycans, which before I heard the term lycanthropy, it seemed kind of a weird word until I thought about it. I'm like, oh, well, I'm a dumbass for not figuring that out sooner. And their werewolves mostly can change at will, but usually with the sway of the moon. And this is going off of a completely different type of mythology that vampires and werewolves are around the same age, which is around 850 years. And it's, I don't know, they're action horror. They're fun, but they're not high on substance. That being said, I'm totally going to see the 5th one when it comes to theaters, because I have had this girl crush on Kate Beckinsale since 2007. So there's no reason why I wouldn't go and see the new one, regardless of how good it is. Speaking of Kate Beckinsale, except this time with a terrible accent, we have Van Helsing. And this one, I kind of call it like a bad love letter to classic Universal monsters with some Hammer thrown in with its low budget techniques. And this one's very entertaining. I mean, it's totally worth watching. I've seen it dozens of times, whether I want to or not, because it would be on TV all the time when I was younger. And the werewolves in here are kind of fun. They kind of go off with the concept that once you turn, you stay that way until death, and that they can be mind controlled by vampires, which is kind of weird, but definitely fun. And then, of course, I can't not mention the Wolfman. And this pack actually has the Wolfman, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, Werewolf of London, and She-Wolf of London. Werewolf of London, which came out in 1935, I kind of like the makeup styling for that one slightly better than Lon Chaney Jr.'s. That one goes off of the concept of a plant being responsible for turning him into a werewolf instead of being bitten, such as the American film that we all know and love. This is the one that comes with the rhyme, a man who is pure of heart and says his prayer by night may still become a wolf when the wolf maiden blooms and the autumn moon is bright, that they say like 10 times throughout the film. That's where that line comes from, not a Florence and the Machine song. That's, of course, totally worth watching. It's a really good film. The sequels are all fun in their own respects. It was just doing the Universal Monster Mash kind of thing. The remake for it, I have mixed feelings on. It's amazing I even own it because it's not that great, but there's things in it that are really cool. I'd say it's worth watching once. However, if you want to watch it again after that, I'm a little surprised because it's very long and slow. Other werewolf movies I've seen and don't own include Wolf with Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer, American Werewolf in Paris, which I thought was horrible, Wolf Cop, which I thought was incredibly entertaining. Thank you, Canada, low budget. and Skinwalkers, which was going off of a lot of Native American folklore when it comes to werewolves. And that one was okay, but was not my favorite. Ones that I haven't seen but would like to include Late Phases, Silver Bullet, Wolfen, and Dog Soldiers. And so I know that most of those are of the more violent persuasion, including a Stephen King adaptation and a Neil Marshall adaptation. So anyway, that's my coverage on werewolves. I hope that you found some interest in it and inspired you to do your own research on lycanthropy. Till next time, Darklings.